A very, very warm welcome again to the channel. Today's pick is again the last part of academic writing, part 6. This is the last part, the last installment, and as we have already previously done, from the classifications, we learned that these five parts we have already completed. Now, it is for this last part, number 6. What is it? The citing resources, editing, book, and media review. So, this is the last part where you need to get the complete comprehensive idea of what is academic writing. So, that without wasting time, let us move on to the root subject matter. Now, there are certain points that you must know. Every researcher acknowledges his or her debt to earlier scholars by carefully documenting each and every source. So, what you have here, it is the debt to earlier scholars. Do not worry, I am giving you those significant parts in each line in that way, like here in the first one, debt to earlier scholars. And you can easily understand from the line what is important in this line. It also helps the reader to verify and evaluate the basis for academic claims and conclusions. So it is about the researcher, it is about the researcher's knowledge and how this knowledge is appropriate, applicable to the factors and what you need to understand and what you need to remember from this slide, from these points, you will gather. Third is borrowing from any source needs to be documented properly. Violation of this amounts to plagiarism. So there is a lot of talk we have already done about plagiarism in earlier videos. Here, again, we will talk about it, but later. Number 4 is the nature of borrowing, whether it is facts, opinions, or quotations, must be clearly indicated. Only those sources should be cited that the researcher has consulted directly. And the last one is descriptions of key features of each source. For example, authorship, identity of the publisher, and medium of publication give the reader opportunity to look at the source and subsequently verify it. If you carefully notice that in each line you have a red marked phrases from which you need to remember that you only have to remember those red marked phrases very specifically. Now, these are the points that you need to remember and note down. Now, moving on to the first segment of this, the citing sources. What is it? There are certain practices in academic recording, documentation or citation. These practices are codified according to a style sheet, and the researchers are supposed to follow these rules. What are these rules? There are two major style sheets that are followed the world over, the APA and the MLA. The citation style sometimes depends on the academic discipline involved. Now, you are again worried what is APA MLA? Questions may be asked on it and how you are going to answer. Here it is. Now, we are going to understand what is APA and MLA. APA is American Psychological Association, MLA is Modern Language Association. So, what are these? Whereas APA is used in education, psychology, and sciences, and MLA is used only in humanities. Moreover, MLA, the discussion we are focusing on, or we are regrouping our focus on this only MLA, that is Modern Language Association. This is very limited to MLA only. We are not going to discuss about APA because this is not necessary right now. Now, the MLA style of documentation, the source is acknowledged in the body of the paper in parentheses. For example, Eliot created a series of similarly surreal pictures in Ash Wednesday, Sanders 533. This is put in within inverted comma, as you can notice. Now, our focus is also this. So, how do we get information about it? These are the factors that we need to understand from this quoted phrase. This citation tells the reader that the quotation is from page 533. It is very easy to understand. A book written by an author named Sanders. And if the reader wants more information about this source, she or he can turn to the works cited list. Now, we'll again understand what is an works cited list. Now, from this red box or within inverted comma part, we have to understand this only, that it is from page 533 and the book is written by Sanders. Moving on to the next, what is then works cited? As we have in the previous slide named works cited list. Now we have to understand what is a works cited list. Here, every piece of academic writing at the end of a list of sources to which there are references in the paper. This is described as works cited. In this list, names of the authors or editors as the case may be are arranged alphabetically. Under the name of the senders, the reader can get the following information. Now we are coming about it, but before that, you need to understand so far what you have seen in a paper or in a dissertation or any work of PhD at the end, what is works cited. Right now, this is the time when you need to understand what exactly is that. This will help you in your future create something better. Now, from this, Sanders, Andrew, The Short Oxford History of English Literature, Oxford University Press, 1994, print. What are the informations that we can gather from here? This entry gives the name of the author, Andrew Sanders. In citations, the last name comes first, followed by the first name. As you can see here, the last name Sanders comes first, Andrew comes later. Then the name of the book, Short Oxford History of English Literature, is mentioned. Oxford University Press is the publisher of the book, and the date of publication is 1994. All informations are here. And with the same color, for your convenience, I have given or I have marked in the same color as it is in this box. It also mentions that the book has been published in print media. Now it is easy for the reader to find out the exact quotation on page 533. There are a few things that need to be noted here. This is a one-line quotation and should be incorporated within the paragraph. The full stop comes after only after the parenthetical citation. So what is parenthetical citation? In earlier page, in earlier slide, we have already seen that 533 from Sanders. Now we understood what is works cited list. Moving on to the next slide, what is quotation then? If the quotation runs to more than 4 lines, it should be indented. Now, here you need to understand that what we understand about quotation, sometimes we quote from a text directly, but here in research work, in academic writing, quotation is something different. Now, these are the rules that you are going to follow when writing an academic writing. So, quotation must be or should be indented if it is more than 4 lines. And what is indented? Okay, we are coming to that point. There should not be any quotation mark in the indented quote. So, in the indentation, now try to understand. The left margin of the selected portion is moved by a few notches, as in the following quotation from the introduction to Measure for Measure, Arden, second series. This is how you have to write an indented quotation. Warren's Compendia della Poesia Tragicomica, 1601, set forth as closely reasoned defense of true tragicomedy as distinguished from tragedy, twisted to a happy ending or the loose medley of English tradition, etc., etc. Now, what we have to understand here is significant. In an indented quotation, parenthetical citation comes after the full stop. We have already gathered here that the parenthetical citation comes only after full stop. Next, since this quotation is not from the main body of the play, but from the introduction, as it is mentioned earlier, the page number in the parenthesis is given in Roman numerals. Where is it? Here. Now you are seeing it, you are watching it in the slide. So here it is in Roman numerals. Now, in case for works cited list, this should be as follows. Shakespeare, William, Introduction, Measure for Measure by J.W. Lever, Bloomsbury, 2013, print. That you have already learned in the previous slide. So this is how you need to write an indented quotation, and this is how you need to write the works cited list. There is a difference. There is a slight difference between this indented quotation mark and works cited list. How you need to prepare these two. Now moving on to the next slide is that research material other than printed sources. We have printed resources severally, but what else we can gather? Other than printed sources, research material is also collected from the web. Web means websites, internet. And the rules for citations of these sources are more or less the same as the printed sources. In citing a web source, the domain name and the date of access need to be mentioned. Do not worry. Example will be given to you. For example, if the student has quoted from the web version of a book, the citation goes like this. Oftentimes, it happens that how to cite one website or how to put the name of the website or the link in the works cited list. This is how you are going to do. Tucked in MM the logic, Imaginations for Aces editor Michael Holquist, translated by Carol Emerson and Holquist, University of Austin Press, 1981, Google Book Search, Web, 12th January 2018. This is how you are going to write. Now, there are several things that demand the attention of the student. So, one student has to remember and has to take notes sincerely about these factors. What are these? The first is the domain name Google Book Search. See here, the Google Book Search. Second, then the identification of the medium, it is web. And lastly, the date of access, 12th January 2018. These are important factors that you need to mention. This example also shows the practice followed in citing an author who did not write in English because it is in French, because it is in translated version. The book was translated from Russian by Carol Emerson and Michael Holquist and edited by Holquist. All these pieces of information have been included in the citation. Editor is abbreviated to ed stop. And the practice of mentioning the last name first is not followed within a citation. See here, this is the difference. Yes, differences may be asked as the question, and you need to put these examples in your exam paper. So here, again for your convenience, I have given the separate colors to understand different segment differently. So now these are the other sources except the printed sources available. So do not just go through the web, do not just surf. Take materials, and that must be done accordingly. And it should be put in the way of following rules. And it should be put following the exact rules. Moving on to the next slide, there are many other rules for citations which are given in detail in the MLA style sheet. And a serious researcher needs to go through this again and again. So the MLA style sheet. Here, the list of works which have been cited comes at the end of the paper. For example, if the paper ends on page 12, the works cited list begins on page 13. See here, this is very significant. So where it ends, works cited list begins just after that page. So if it ends on page 12, it will start from page 13. The following is an example for your, again, understanding, or rather better understanding. Works cited: Herbert Janet, The Evolution of Film, Rethinking Film Studies, Polity 2007, print. Shakespeare, William, Introduction, Measure for Measure by J.W. Lever, Bloomsbury 2013, print. And Bakhtin MM Dialogic Imagination, the one that you recently received in the earlier slide. Do not forget to put comma and dot accordingly and following the rules again. So this is how you need to write a works cited list. True, though the paper is written within 1.5 spacing, in the works cited list, double spacing has been used. See here, you again have to understand what is a 1.5 spacing. If you have Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word, then you can understand what is 1.5 spacing or double space, etc. Sometimes the font size in works cited is 1 point less than the font size used in the paper, and sometimes a different font can be used. If the citation runs to more than one line as in the third entry, the second and third line may be indented half inch from the left margin. This is called hanging indentation. Now, a question may be asked again, what is hanging indentation? And do not worry again, because I have given the question, set of questions at the end, as I have already done in the previous videos and the previous slides. Now, one more significant point that I need to share with you, that I am not explaining 1.5 spacing or double space, etc., or fonts can be changed or different fonts, because the time when we'll come to the part 6 of academic writing, by this time you will have to understand, or you have probably get the better understanding of what exactly are these, what are the fonts, or how the space should be used, what is called 1.5 spacing, etc. So there is no necessity to discuss this further with you here, because this will take time, this will kill our presentation seriously. Student is advised to take suggestions from the teacher as always in formatting the paper, including the list of works cited. Again, moving to the next slide. So here comes the point of editing. Editing, the job of an editor begins after the paper is submitted for publication. So for example, a student wrote a paper, it is submitted. Now the editor's task begins. There are two aspects to an editor's job. The first one is focusing on the content, and the second one is on the format. So, editor is focusing on 2 points. One is on the content, second on the format. Now, editing the content involves extensive range of activity, starting from checking the spelling and grammatical correctness of the writing to evaluating the acceptability, validity, and legality of the content. Editing is a pre-publication job. It has to introduce a uniform style starting from margin to citation, so that when it reaches to the typesetter, the final process becomes smooth. Now, it has to be because once you complete the whole procedure step by step, when it will go to the typesetter, for him or her, it will be easier task because you have already set the previous aspects smoothly. Editing of the content begins with checking the spelling and grammatical correctness. Just you have noticed the front part. With the use of computers, the author can do it herself or himself to some extent. Even then, it remains the editor's responsibility to apply human mind. Now, this is significant. You cannot rely on computer only. Human mind is so powerful and it has to be. To the job, so human mind, application to the human mind to the job, because the artificial intelligence, that is the AI, of the computer cannot always take a judgment call as to the structure of a sentence or the use of a particular punctuation. If a word is not there in the computer vocabulary, and it oftentimes happens because sometimes your spelling may not match, you will get a red underline because that is not present in computer's vocabulary. So it is underlined as incorrect then. In such situations, the direction of the editor is invaluable. The editor has to keep in mind the thrust area of the paper and pay particular attention to the development of thought in it. Consistency of argument is a seminal point because if there is no consistency, there is no argument at all. In academic writing, and editor, if necessary, can suggest changes to the author. The final print ready paper should make sense and be easily accessible to the reader. The editor must have reasonable exposure to the subject that the paper covers to be able to do the job properly. These are not very tough and complicated words. Not even the sentences are very difficult to understand. You can understand only, you will better understand if you go through by yourself. Once you start working, once you start formatting, once you start if writing one of your essay, one of your paper, then you can understand what is meant here. So this is the part of editing. Now moving again for a few more points about the same topic, editing. The job of the editor also involves checking the validity of the information. So grammar and spelling, and then validity of the information provided by the author. So one student wrote certain aspects of on any topic, but the editor has to be careful about the informations provided by that student or any author on that paper. The editor must make sure that all the borrowings are acknowledged, and as far as practicable, remove the possibility of plagiarism. So some student must not get the idea from somewhere. As I am taking the resource or the sources, the lines from a particular source, this should not be done for academic writing, proper research work. So the editor's task is to validate the informations. He or she needs to gather information whether those informations provided in the text or provided in the research work are true or not. So to avoid the plagiarism, the editor has to ensure that the content in no way incites violence, not detrimental to peace and harmony in public life, and controversial elements in the content, if any, are well argued and do not indulge in irrational, unfounded views and opinions. This is very serious issue because one should not one should not incite anything that if one student's writing may influence something dangerous or different kind of aspects. The editor should not entertain. So, and the editor's task is also to check the aspect, to check the informations, and to check the credibility of the informations, whether they are good for the public, whether they are detrimental to the public or public life, etc. Editing the format of or the style requires familiarity with the accepted style sheet. For example, an editor who is working in the humanities must have knowledge about the MLA style sheet. And this is very true, because if the editor has not any idea on the MLA style sheet, the editor cannot understand what the student has done, or what the author has done, or what the researcher so far has written. Attention must also be paid to maintaining uniformity in the use of quotation and punctuation marks, margin, indentation, font size, spacing, and citations. So these factors are also important, and the editor has to maintain this uniformity of all these aspects. This is particularly relevant for an anthology of a journal where there are multiple authors who, in their individual contributions, may have used different styles or formats. So, if there are so many styles combined together one by one, the editor has to put one style format or one MLA style sheet. If the MLA style sheet. So these are the more points about editing. Moving on to book review. What and who? That means what is book review and who are or who is a reviewer. Book review is a kind of critical reading. Book reviews are usually not too long. That means it should not exceed 1,000 words. Yes, Eliot once remarked that critics are only better readers. So the reviewer is considered to be a person who is better equipped than an ordinary reader to analyze various aspects of a book or a paper, and and to give a judgment which may influence the reader in her or his assessment of the writing and even dictate its acceptability in the market. So whether the writing will be accepted in the market or the people will like it or not, editor has to understand that too. And for that, the editor needs to be better equipped than the ordinary reader, and should have an analysis power, and should possess a judgmental view. Judgmental view in the sense that whether this is detrimental to the society, contagious materials are there, or very powerful obstacles are here, can destroy the mentality of the society as well. Those should be removed, and the knowledge must be there in editor's mind. It is difficult to prescribe a set of rules for book reviews, as books are varied in subject and area of specialization, orientation, and target readership. Now, you can understand the specialization, orientation, but what about the target readership? And I can understand that this is a valid or significant point to understand what is target readership, and this is our point right now. Technical journal has a dedicated readership, but in some other piece of writing, which may not be too strictly technical, the target readership may be lay people rather than experts. Lay people means ordinary people. The reviewer may not be able to write the review of the former without technical knowledge. It is correct. But any intelligent person with a liberal reading habit may be able to review the latter for the lay reader. A review of fiction has the requirements different from the review of a book of jurisdiction or history. And it is practically true, because two sets are different and demand two kinds of appeal. Naturally, target readership also become different in these segments. Therefore, target readership must be taken into consideration. When one is writing for a regular newspaper column, it is necessary to provide names of the author and the publisher, the title of the book, total page count, kind of cover, and price. Many people take these reviews as guide to their choice of reading material. This similarly happens with movies. For example, if you are reviewing Animal, the very recent controversial movie of Ranbir Kapoor, your review may mean something to a set of audience or the film goers who will read your review and then will decide whether they go to watch the movie or not. So this is similar, or this is similarly happens with the book review. Unfortunately, books are not much read than the movies are seen. If the review is published in a scholarly journal, the target readership is different. And information about cover, page number, or price may not be important. So, scholarly journal has its own merits. Naturally, the target readership will be different in this case because in that case, page number or cover will not be a matter of fact because the scholarly journal itself, because of its quality, will give you something better. As part of these imponderables, what are imponderables? Difficult to measure or understand. This is the meaning of this word. A few assumptions may be made about the basic requirement of a book review. What are these? The reviewer must read the book thoroughly because the review needs to be well planned and written within a tight word limit. Precision is an important component of a review, therefore. There are three basic sections of a book review. First, there should be a summary of the content so that even if the reader has not read the book, she or he can get a fairly good idea of what it is about. The second is the analysis of the major ideas or themes that the author has tried to deal with. This part should be objective and it has to be and never venture out of the scope of the book. It is the book that is at the center of attention and not references drawn from outside or comparisons with other books of a similar kind. So, analysis of major ideas or themes, and because why I should emphasize that it should be objective, because if it will not be objective, your judgment, that means as an ordinary person, you can judge it in other ways. So the reviewer has to be strict about its objective, his or her objective outlook. The third part is the reviewer's considered opinion about the book. Comparisons and references may be a part of this opinion. So reviewer has to consider a definite opinion about this. Now, because there are three sections, there is still one more. That is the final one. The reviewer gives a judgment about the book's success and shortcomings and whether the author has been able to do justice to the subject. The reviewer may sometimes also include suggestions for improvement. These are the total imponderables which you need to understand while trying to understand who is a reviewer, what is a book review. Now it is time to film review. Just like the book review, we have to understand about the film review too. Now, what is it? Like a book review, a film review is also fraught with enormous scope and depends on the kind of film that is under review, the expertise of the reviewer, and the target readership. Target readership, I hope it's clear right now. If the film under scrutiny is Makbul, so there is an example, Makbul. For example, the reviewer must be familiar with the Shakespearean play Macbeth, of which the former is an adaptation. And exposure to other films like Makbul, you have Hamlet, Shahid Kapoor's adaptation of Hamlet in Hindi, and again Omkara, Othello's adaptation. These are the films, and they are based on Shakespearean plays. An exposure to other films made on the play is also necessary. An adaptation of a classic text in a different language, culture, and time period is a doubly distilled text. From page to stage or celluloid is the process of adaptation and creation of a different kind of text. Removal from the original by language, culture, and time period requires enormous creative energy, and the reviewer must point it out. So, reviewer has to be meticulous about it. He or she needs to find out and focus on these aspects where a film is different and adapted in different language, in different time period, in different culture. In a film that does not have such serious intentions and is mostly geared towards entertainment, the reviewer's job becomes much less demanding. So, whereas entertainment, which seems to be most significant part, reviewer's job becomes less demanding in that cases. Like book reviews, film reviews also should be short. Here also the target readership has to be taken into consideration. The film should be watched carefully, if necessary more than once because, as in the case of a book review, here too the reviewer has a length constraint and must chalk out the plan well before writing it down. Chalking out your plan or the reviewer will not chalk out the plan, then the precision will be dismantled. It will not be precise as it will be expected from a reviewer. Now, other points of film review still remains. There are at least five basic sections. So for book review, we have suggested three basic sections. There are five basic sections in a film review. The story should be outlined in the beginning so that even if the reader has not watched the film, she gets a fairly good idea of what it is all about. Development of the plot should be discussed and the main characters should be identified in relation to one another. Second was the analysis of the major ideas or themes of the film comes next. Like the book review, this part should be objective and never venture out of the scope of the film. Again, in a book, as in a book, it is in the film that is at the center of attention and not references from outside of comparisons with other films of a similar kind. So, just like the book review, there is a slight difference. Whether in book review you have the other references, but in film reviews, the center of attention is always the film, and the references drawn from outside or comparisons with other films of a similar kind should not be brought into. Third is the comment on the performance of the actors, the score and choreography. Because the film is a performance text, the reviewer should mention this. There are technical aspects of a film, and the reviewer must be familiar with this. Cinematography, editing, etc. demand attention and to some extent make or mar the film. Mar the film means destroy the film. Critical observation about these aspects is expected in a film review. The final part is the reviewer's considered opinion about the film, just like in the reviewer's considered opinion in the book review or in case of book review. In case of film review, it is similarly expected. Comparisons and references may be a part of this opinion. The intention of the director should also be underscored by the reviewer, as it is central to a film review. The reviewer may express his own review about the director's success and shortcomings, make recommendations for the reviewers, also include suggestions for improvement. Recommendations are appropriate for review in a newspaper or magazine, though not so much for a scholarly journal devoted to film studies. So these are the 5 points that story should be outlined in the beginning, and etc., marked in the green color, so that you can have easily access to these points, and also you have the better comprehensive ideas about these points about the film review. So these are the factors. If you are asked to write a question on film review in an elaborate way, asking for 15 marks, you can write these clearly. Definitely with examples. So now you can choose your own examples from different sets, different kinds. Moving on to the next, the questions as well. What is a works cited list? And there are almost, I have collected. So for 12 questions, there may be more questions asking for different merits. That means asking for either 5 marks or 15 marks. These questions you can practice. The answer you will get in the previous slides. And if any problem process, as you know, that you can directly freely ask me. If you have any problem in understanding, you can seriously ask me in the comment section. But significantly, you have to understand whether these questions are related to the slides or not, whether you are finding or whether you are getting informations about the questions in the slides or not. If not, then just go again and again through the video so that you will have a better comprehensive idea. Now, as always, this is the source. I am very much indebted to this source. I am taking materials from this book as well. And finally, thank you very, very much for watching the video. Stay safe and positive. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Thank you.